when people were complaining so much about oh, you ruined it, they didn't speak the truth. I'm like, they didn't really ruin it. It is an adequate ending. Like my friend Debbie has watched Supernatural like we have, and she loved the ending. She thought it was perfect. It totally worked for her, you know, as opposed to something like The 100, or I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I've heard it from Game of Thrones, where the ending did not work for anybody. Very few people like the ending of How I Met Your Mother. When it's that much, like everybody's like, whoa, where did you go? Is totally different than just they didn't do what you wanted to.
That's so true. I'm mad because they didn't do what I wanted them to. Plain and simple.
I should have just not watched episode 20. Remember, I think you and I had messaged a little bit about, I think I had posted on one of your Instagram posts, and I'm like, I'm really kind of worried about episode 20.
Yeah.
Episode 19 ended like the way I wanted the show to end.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I really loved the whole, like my favorite thing of everything literally was the whole memory, going down memory lane, and all the characters talking about their experience on Supernatural prior to the show. Yeah. That's why I was like, you little buttholes, you guys are going to do something mean and you're going to break my heart. You're doing it. The other thing I didn't tell you either is how Dean died. Like there was no blood. Like it just was not realistic at all. Like,
and it's true, there was just a little bit of blood. Actually, now I will tell you, I can't remember if I messaged you this. So here's a weird thing, right? I've been watching Arrow. I've never watched Arrow before. In the end of season 1, the hero's best friend dies because he falls on a piece of rebar in a crash. There was not a crash. There's the building collapses. There's a bomb, and it collapses on him. He gets impaled on rebar. In the 100, the character doesn't end up dying because of this very strange storyline where she can go into a disk drive and end up living still. And just don't question it. But Amari, the building they're in, caves in, impaled on a piece of rebar.
What is it with the CW and rebar?
I don't know, but even, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is a show that ended last year that I really like, there's a character, Fitz, and he had a doppelganger, which again is a very complicated story. There were 2 of him because of a time continuum issue. So one version of Fitz in a building collapses, impaled on rebar. I'm like, what the hell, show writers, can you not think? My theory is, this was my theory, I don't think I told you this, I think I might have told somebody else. My theory is that being impaled on something gives you enough time to have a death scene, because you don't, unless you get impaled like through the heart or something, you don't die instantly, but you definitely die. So you can have a sad
conversation.
That's my only guess, because I'm like, it's like way too many characters die on a piece of rebar.
I knew this was the CW's demise. I just knew it. Because the other thing that they do is they have the alternate universes and all this crap. Listen, this is what I use for my cats to spray them, which you obviously cannot see. Where are they and how can I squirt them right now? So that's so funny that you tell me that. Oh gosh. Why can't I write for Supernatural? I swear, Dean Winchester is probably me if I was a boy. No joke. Hey everyone, welcome back to Life After Neverland. So I just could not leave well enough alone. I still have to talk about Supernatural because quite honestly, I cannot let go. That's my problem, and that will always be my problem. And since we talked to Sean, who, very casually watches Supernatural, I wanted to talk to my friend Cindy, who I haven't seen in like forever. Love her so much. She was nice enough to come and jump in on the conversation about the ending of Supernatural. And also, actually, Cindy, if you want to talk about the entire season 15, I'm totally down.
Okay.
It's just kind of like let's call it a season 15 wrap up. But everybody, this is my buddy Cindy. What's up?
You there? Hi, everyone.
Hey, Cindy. I'm so glad you're here. So Sean made this background for me, and I'm really animated. So you might see my hands or you might not see my hands. Maybe you'll see my head. I'm not sure.
I think it's very fitting for Supernatural. It's kind of, like ghostly.
Yes, I'm a ghost, but I'm a friendly ghost. So, but I'll do whatever I can to get the attention of Sam and Dean, even if they are in heaven. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, they're still someplace. So, Yes. There's still hope.
Yes. So Jensen keeps playing with us. Because he mentioned, he has that WB contract or some sort of deal with them where he's
his wife. Yeah. They have well, and there's the dog chiming in on his opinions of Supernatural.
That's how
Jensen and Danielle, I'm not saying her name right because it's not actually Danielle. Danielle own a production company, and their production company has signed with WB. Now, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I was doing a little research this morning through some older things because I remembered a couple years ago when they first, if everybody remembers, even though it was season 15, they announced that they were going to stop, I think back in season 13 or so. They said season 15 would be the last season. And they had a bunch of quotes back then about what they wanted to happen. And it's kind of interesting. It took me a little bit to find them because there's about 1 million articles out there right now about season 15. And way back in season 13, Jared was funny because he said, both Jared and Jensen said that they thought the characters should probably both die, or at least one of them should die. But then Jensen said, but on the other hand, maybe it would be nice if they go into the sunset so that we can do a reboot sometime.
So
Which
they
is
did both.
interesting that in a way they did, right? And I know there's been a lot of controversy over episode 20. I don't know. For me, I think they kind of left it in a good place for the average fan, where that if you didn't like episode 20, episode 19, there you go. You're just like, it ends and that's my end. And I can pretend 20 never ever happens. And Dean and Sam are out there someplace riding off into the sunset doing what they want to do. I mean, I know, and I think you had probably said this too. When I watched episode 19, when it was over, I was like, what are they going to do for episode 20? Like, this is the perfect ending. Now, I will say the perfect ending from me. And I don't know about you, and I was actually kind of surprised with a lot of the outcry from the fan base that they expected the characters to live.
That's true. That's why I love talking, even if it's a controversial conversation. For example, you think one way and I think the other. And I think Sean agrees with you in a lot of ways, but you've been watching the show, and not to discredit Sean's opinion, but he watches it like whenever I have it on, and he's barely watching it. Like he'll be texting on his phone or doing something, playing a video game or something like that. But what was I don't know. For me, I wrote down my notes because I can't even go back to watch it because I get so emotional. Even talking about it, and I was reading the messages that you sent me, and you were saying that like you were the same way, going back and watching it again almost felt like torture.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, I just feel like they spent like 15 years fighting for what I feel like is, freedom. They sacrifice everything to save the world. And so that's something that I'm having a really hard time letting go of, that these two young men that I fell in love with from the very beginning are sacrificing so much in order for Dean to end on a rebar. Because this is what Dean said, and I had to write it down because I forgot about it and I didn't say it in my last video with Sean. Dean accepts who they are as men and says that their lives now belong to them after they got rid of God. So their lives belong to them, which was extremely important to Dean since God controlled their lives, basically. Right. And I think I saw throughout the entire season 15, Dean was really struggling with that when he came to the realization that his life truly wasn't his own. And then after episode 19, their life finally was able to belong to them. And he even said that, even though he said other things too that could relate to the other ending, right, the actual ending. So I was holding on to that, and I was wanting them to be happy.
You know what? And I think, and this is where I think there was a mistake in the storyline. I mean, no storyline is going to ever be perfect.
Right.
I think that it would have been more palatable to a lot of people if you had felt like a longer amount of time passed between 19 and 20. Now we know it's not immediate. It's not like, okay, God is, defeated and tomorrow they went and fought these vampires. You can tell that it's not because they've got the dog, they've got their whole new morning routine going on. But it doesn't feel like it was a long time. Was it a couple weeks? Was it a couple months? It certainly doesn't feel like a couple of years. And I think if they did like a jump forward and it's, like 1 year later, I think people probably would have felt better about that, or at least I would have felt better about that, because you could have been at least he had some time to just enjoy. He got that vacation that he wanted on the beach, and he got to do those things where it did feel very like this happened, then this happened, because they were still talking about Cass and Jack a little bit. So at least I didn't feel like it was a significant amount of time, but they don't tell us how long it is. So, you know, it could
I
have been.
have to agree with you, like 1,000%, because you had texted me that, and I would have liked that. I I think that if there are any fans that think the way I think, of course I want Sam and Dean, if they're going to end their existence, I want them to be in heaven. And I absolutely 100% want them to be in heaven with all of their loved ones that they've met and lost along the way. And especially with each other and Castiel and even Bobby. But um, it's unorganized writing and directing on my part. I really, in my heart, that's how I feel is what went wrong. And there were these, what I call random episodes.
For the
Along,
season, yeah.
yes, like to take that crap out and get into the heart and the depth of this last season here. If they knew in 13 that 15 for sure was definitely going to be the end and they felt it in their gut, then I wish they would have planned better, because I wrote down the ones that I didn't like. Like there were some real goofy ones, like when Dean was, now I liked the episode because I felt like it was so Dean, but in the grand scheme of the entire season, I didn't like it. It was the one, I think it was called Last Call, where Dean had his friend at a bar. We never met this guy before.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dean got up and he started singing karaoke. And they even had like the beers, and the beers said family business. And then there was the one where they had Garth in there. Like to me, Garth is like the most not important. Maybe it's just me. Please don't throw tomatoes at me, people. But I don't care for Garth that much. I don't. That episode
Garth grew on me, but he's definitely not like a super favorite. Yeah, I think they had a lot of random episodes in there, or they had things with the whole God storyline where it was like really elongated out. Like you'd have an episode about that, but nothing really happened in, which made me then almost like the filler episodes better. Like I really like the episode with the wood sprite, whatever she was, giving Dean and Sam all the holidays they had never had, you know, and their bagged lunch, and it like had nothing to do with stop the flow of the overall storyline, but it was just such a nice like time with our boys, you know, and getting them to be happy.
Yeah.
But some of them it was like, okay, here's this whole thing and then nothing ever happens in the episode. It's almost like they didn't have enough material for the God storyline.
Yeah.
Or they didn't make it in depth enough.
Yeah. They failed our boys. Like to me, I'm so sad to say, I feel like they failed our boys. And I think you could probably agree with me that when Jensen directs the show, the episodes are really good. And he hasn't directed as many as I would have liked. I think he's only directed a handful throughout the entire 15 years that we've known Supernatural.
Yeah.
And did you ever see the one that was it was about Bobby? It was it's gonna kill me. The title of the show is called something like A Day in the Life of Bobby, but my brain has farted. Someone's gonna know and they're gonna put it down in the comments down below. But Jensen directed that, and that's actually one of my most favorite episodes. But the directing and stuff, it failed. Even we had Dean tap dancing at one point. I can't remember what episode that was. That was really
I don't remember that episode. I remember it happening, but I don't remember the rest of the episode. Yeah, and you know, and you do have to wonder. When I was like looking through articles today, I found an older article from Looper talking about the show ending, and it said one of the problems was, and I do wonder with Jensen getting the production company, was that throughout the series, Jared and Jensen were just actors. I mean, I don't want to say that like people don't say, oh, you're saying just. I'm saying their role was they were the stars, and yes, people listened to them, but in the business structure of it, they were never producers. Like a lot of the times you have people who they get on a show, they're the stars, and by the end of the show they're like assistant producer, associate producer, whatever. Throughout the show their role has always been actors. They haven't been writers, and Jensen has done a little directing but not a lot. So even though they were the heart of the show, they didn't really have the control over it that some people would have in their place.
Right.
And that was in this article. One of the theories is doing that, letting them move on to something else. And with all of the rumors about maybe Jensen would be the one who would do the reboot when they do it, since it is the agreement with the WB, and the WB is Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers is the owner of Supernatural. So where he could do more of his vision. And when I dug back, because I know too, there were comments about how he wasn't happy with the ending himself, and that Kripke told him he was too close to it and step it back. So Jensen's prior comments were one of two things. He either wanted them to ride off into the sunset, or he wanted it to be a blaze of glory. And he really didn't get either unless you end with 19. Now, I've read a bunch of articles about the ending, and he said, I came to peace with it. I am okay with it. It would not have been my choice, but I do understand there was kind of a poetry in that he didn't go down in a blaze of glory. And they talked about this in a Den of Geek article. Is back in season 1, the first time Dean actually almost dies is the episode where he meets the Reaper, and he dies. He almost dies because of a simple accident. They're fighting somebody, and there's water on the ground. I don't know if you remember that episode, and a wire goes into it, and he gets electrocuted, and it permanently damages his heart.
Yes.
And it's just that same sort of mistake. And this death is that same sort of thing that, they've done all of these great things in their life. They've saved the world, but in the end, they're still just men, and life is fragile, and you never know when your last moment is going to be. And there's kind of a lesson in there that for all of these times where they were out there and they thought they were going to die, this is, we're facing God, we're facing Lucifer. In the end, it's the simple things of life that you don't expect that can change the course of a life.
Yes. So that's an interesting thought all on its own, because, and I think I told you this, the day after the show, leading into the day after that, it literally took me a weekend. I literally felt like I lost someone beloved to me. Like, even though this was just a character on a TV show, I felt like I really lost someone that I loved. And I think it's because with Supernatural, they're always toying with us. How many times have Sam and Dean and Bobby and everyone died, and then ultimately, and Cass even, they come back.
Right.
And then when Dean got, impaled on this rebar, I literally was like, huh? What? Oh, they'll get him back. He'll be fine,
Right.
And then I feel like even Sam was kind of like, and then, whoa, like, maybe, that, like, I'm thinking, was that good or was that bad? Because we all kind of had the same reaction in a way that Sam did. Like, is this really happening? This actually is really happening. Yeah. And then you think about how fragile life is. Like, life is so fragile, but Supernatural hasn't done that for us for 15 years. And and then
right, there was always do-overs, and this was like no do-over now.
Yes. And so maybe that's why people just really couldn't swallow it, because we've been babied for so long.
Yeah.
And then it was like reality slapped us in the face, and we really weren't quite ready for it. I would never have been ready for it. So that's another part. But the other thing that I was going to say is that what you said is, had they maybe taken out some of the filler episodes, we could have led up to it a little bit differently and been able to accept it in a different way, because it did seem a bit thrown together.
Yeah, like if they had one, so let's say they had 21 episodes. So episode 20 is showing them on their normal life. It gives them time to mourn Cass. There was huge complaints about them not having time to mourn Cass. You have Dean warns him a little bit right after he dies. Sam makes one mention of him, and then it's like, and Bobby makes the mention of him at the end in heaven, but they don't really ever go back there. So if you had an episode, instead of that first 10 minutes where they're playing around in the bunker and going to pie things, if you had a whole regular episode like that, and then maybe one more, or maybe not another episode, but you made this episode an hour and a half, and like I said, and then do a slight time jump to show this happened and now they're there. I think that's what it is a lot for me, taking the cast stuff out of it, because I understand people have major issues with that, which is outside of my issues with what they did. It felt rushed.
Yeah.
And then you have like rushed to, at the beginning, it was kind of rushed, like, here's a little bit of what their lives have been like. Then you have this long part of Dean's death scene, which I understand. They wanted to give that some gravitas. They wanted it to be meaningful. They wanted to make us all sob, which I don't know about you and everybody watching, but I have sobbed multiple times since I rewatched that scene, being glutton for punishment to reanalyze it.
Yeah.
And then the end felt rushed. The showing the scenes from Sam's life, it was like bing, 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 bing.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand time constraints, everything, but maybe like a little bit more time of Sam. I mean, I understand COVID, they had COVID restrictions, but they had to have had those different actors playing his son. So they could have done like slightly longer scenes with him and his son, I would think, or a
Right.
little bit more. And I think that's what it is the bookends on the side of the death scene were just so fast that it was kind of like whiplash.
Yeah, legit, you're in shock. I was in shock. So I wasn't even crying. So I was going through some really weird emotions. Like I was like, shock? No. Wait. This is real. Then I was pissed. I was so pissed that you would do that to Dean freaking Winchester. I'm like in love with him, legit. And you do that to him, who, in my opinion, is a true hero. Okay, and I understand, like, the concept of he's human, and Dean always figured that this would happen to him. That's another thing. But then, like I said, I have this issue with him actually saying that they have their lives back. So the way that they wrote everything was that they have their lives back, and then boom, it's immediately taken away from Dean. So that's why I got pissed. Okay, he got to have like an array of pies that he was able to eat and snuggle on a dog for what felt like a day, and then he died. That's a travesty in my eyes.
Right. Give him the time with the dog. Give him the beach vacation. Now, somebody, and it's interesting because I've tried freezing the scene and I couldn't really tell exactly. After he dies and Sam goes into his room, there's paperwork on his desk, and the paperwork talks about conditions. And some people online have said that when they've looked at it, it was a job application. So like he was going to go and try to live a normal life, perhaps, which makes it like even more tragic that he didn't get that opportunity. Which again, I think is probably the point. And now I will say, when I'm watching it, I was like you, when he hit that rebarb, when I was watching the fight scene, first of all, I'm going to tell you, and you will understand this because you're a dog person. My first thing is when they were fighting, and for a minute, I'm like, oh my God, are they both going to die? What's going to happen to the dog? It's going to be left in the bunker alone and starve.
Always.
I'm like,
I always think about that.
I'm like, they can't do that to the dog. And then they made it. I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I was wrong. But I thought they're going to die. Maybe I was wrong. And I saw the rebarb and I saw the fight, and it didn't really like click in my brain till afterwards that it was Dean was the person who got stuck on it and not the vampire, because it was like a very dark shooting. And at first I thought it was the vampire. And then I saw it, I'm like, no way. They did not just do that. And then I was like you, I was kind of like in shock for the rest of that scene. Like even though I was listening to that final speech, I like wasn't really going in because I'm like, I can't, which is why I then had to go back and rewatch it, especially when I was reading comments on it. I was like, I think I missed a lot and I needed to rewatch it and understand what they did. And they said, I've come to a point where I understand the episode. I can accept the episode. I think it works in a lot of ways. It is not what I would have done. I think there are a bunch of plot holes, but I understand where they were going. My biggest plot hole is, I don't know about you, and again, it got lost in some of the internet discussions because of the whole cast thing, but why in the world did Jack bring monsters back?
See, okay, and that's a whole other thing. So I think that they should have made a choice. If they wanted to do the impale Dean on a freaking rhubarb, do it. If you wanted Jack to basically save the world, do that. But I feel like one of the things Supernatural has been doing ever since season 5, like past season 5, is what they think the fans might want, or maybe what they even think Jared and Jensen might want. They just kind of try to do it all, and then it just turns into a hot mess. Like for example, Castiel's demise. That is not how I saw Cass going down. And that's just it. I just didn't see that's, please don't read into that, anyone. I just did not see Castiel. If you think about Castiel from season 4, when he first entered, I mean, that was, where is he? Epic,
Yeah.
epic, 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 epic. Castiel is a beloved character that is, in my eyes, extremely precious. And I feel like ever since season 5, they have just done nothing but just mess with his character and twist it in a bunch of weird ways that just don't make any sense to me. And just like his death, it just, I honestly thought his happiness, because I knew the happiness, the empty said once Cass becomes happy that they would take him. I didn't think it was going to go that way. I know that he loves Dean.
Right.
I was thinking he loves Dean more in a way that God loves us, loves us as humans. That's what I was thinking. I thought it was more because of Jack. I thought Jack would bring Cass a fatherly happiness that Castiel would never have known in his life because he's an angel. And to be a father, I just think that would bring a tremendous amount of happiness, and I just didn't see it going the way it went.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point, because I've been doing a rewatch. So I had been doing a rewatch before the end of season 15, but then I got distracted by, other shows on Netflix. So I had only gotten up to, I think I'm in season 8 or 9 now. And the season that I'm watching right now, there's the whole thing with, oh my God, and I should totally know this, and I'm blanking out the name of his vessel, Jimmy, with Jimmy's daughter, with Claire. Yeah. And there's the whole episode that I just watched 2 weeks ago is Cass trying to replace her father and getting her a stuffed animal and everything. And I agree with you, that was very important to him. And I think being able to have Jack was important to him. I certainly did not think that the way he was going to die either. I think it was on their part. They were trying to call out to the Destiel shippers, and it kind of blew up in their face because they didn't get the reaction they thought they would. I think, again, anybody who thought that Cass was not going to die at the end of the show, I don't know what show you've been watching. There was no way Cass was surviving.
Right.
I really thought it was going to be a bittersweet ending afterwards, though, where everything would be resolved and then the empty would take him and it would be tragic. Though I guess I can see why they wouldn't go down that route, because you do that, then it's okay, well, what happens next? Aren't Sam and Dean going to go try to get him? Where since he sacrificed himself, it kind of ends that. And I know Misha's commented on it that he thought it was a good ending for Cass, that Cass sacrificing himself to save the world kind of brought him full circle back to his purpose in life. So
yeah, and so what's weird with that is that's where, again, I'm going to blame this literally on the writers of Supernatural. I really, really am, because I think that what you're saying then ties into what I'm saying about Castiel's character, and staying true to Castiel's character, that the happiness, in my opinion, would have been better suited with Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know he loves Dean. We all know that Castiel probably knew Dean better than Dean knew himself, and better than Sam knew Dean. We all already knew that. And I don't think it needed to really go there, because guess what? Dean character would never have fulfilled that if Castiel really was interested in Dean in a sexual way, lover way, Dean his character would never have fulfilled that need. So it was pointless and idiotic, in my opinion, for that reason alone.
I mean, and for me, I agree with you. I never saw that. I think I'm going to say it can go both ways. The people who are huge shippers for that will say that we are the ones who are blind, that we're seeing what we want to see. We can say that they're seeing what they want to see. I think we all see, things through our own eyes, through our own prisms, through our own viewpoint. I had never seen their relationship that way myself.
No.
Doesn't bother me that people see it that way. It has never been my reading of the show. And again, somebody, I think again on TikTok had mentioned, and I don't know if this is a difference, is I started watching the show in 2005. Okay. Yeah, I'm old, guys. My son was born the same year Supernatural started. So my son was born that fall. So right after Supernatural started, I grew with the show and I watched it every year. So my interpretation of these scenes that like for me, okay, yeah, sure. Somebody's like, here's a little scene where it's Dusty Ellish and here it's here and here's one 6 episodes later. Well, when I watched them, they were 6 weeks later. And so maybe, yes, when you're somebody who has watched it and you're seeing it as a streamer and you're watching all of these episodes in a row, maybe it does look different than when you see it week by week by week, because I already had my opinions of who these characters were. To me, I think, sure, Cass could love Dean. I never really thought of Cass myself as a very sexual being. I know he's had a few like sexual episodes in the series, but he's celestial, he's above. And my big thing for me with Dean and Cass was that Dean taught Cass how to be human and how to care. And that was the more important thing when you look at Cass in season 4, who I am an angel of the Lord, and he is doing what he is told to do and following the rules. He's not just an angel, he was an angels were soldiers, and he was a soldier, and that was it, duty and what I need to do. And by the end of the series, he's like, he's an angel, but he's a person. He has feelings, he cares about people, he cares about the world. And to me, that is what Dean gave him more than a romantic love, a bigger overarching theme. But again, I have no problem if people want to see a relationship there. It just, it wasn't there for me. So that particular scene did not bother me in the way it bothered many people.
Right. And Sean and I both agree with you on that. Like for me, now when I might have to go back and rewatch it. I've seen little clips of it with people's, obvious their different opinions on it. And I guess, according to the way Misha has presented it, it was meant to be a Destiel moment. And for me as a fan, whenever fans would put Cass and Dean together in that way, I just didn't see that. And so I just didn't really enjoy that. And it disappointed me that they actually went ahead and decided to go ahead and do that, because I've always seen, like I said, our God, like our God, not supernatural on the TV show God, who in my opinion was a little baby who needed a pacifier. That God, no. But our God, the way he would love us.
I'm sorry. I just got a message that somebody was coming to my door. The dog will be done in a minute.
You need to go?
No, they're just leaving something at the door.
Listen, we were doing a stream last night and our dogs were doing the same thing, so don't feel bad. But yeah, I just feel like it was a love, like the type of love that is it's on a soul level that's so deep. We all long to have that love. We all of us long to have that love, and Castiel 100%, no doubt.
Yeah.
For Dean, but not in the way that I feel like it's being perceived. So, but if they had wanted it to go that way, then there was a failure in the writing, in my opinion, because that's why it was not received very well, or maybe the way that it's perceived is so scandalous because it was not written very well.
I agree. And I think one of the things that people have to take into consideration is we're looking at 15 years. The first 5 years, okay, some of the episodes, really good. Okay, Bugs is not going to go down in history as the best episode ever. It's a very traditional, corny horror type of movie. But the first 5 years, Kripke was in control. So it was tight. He knew where I shouldn't say he totally knew where he was going. He evolved for sure. The first season, he was much more a monster of the week type of show. And then he built his overarching theory and wrote his 5 years, and he knew where it was going. He knew who those characters were. He knew where it was going to be. Then, it was so popular, he left and the show didn't end. And I think then they had Sarah comes in and she's there for like 2 years, and then different showrunners, and I know the whole list, but I didn't write them down for us to talk about. But one's there for like 2 to 4 years, and then one's there for this year and one's there for that year, and there are different writers coming in and out. And I think that's where some of the inconsistencies end up happening. One of the articles I was reading, somebody talked about one of the writers, and I can't remember his name. He really liked the Castiel Dean relationship, and they talk about how they think some of the where the fans feel that the storylines weren't picked up or were unfair is he would write something because he really liked that, and he'd be kind of like, yeah, let me explore their relationship more, and then somebody else would write the next 3 episodes and they're like, nope, nope, not doing there. And I think that is part of the thing of a serial show where it's not the same people in control all the time. Yes, do they need to keep to their canon and try to build on the character development in an ideal world? Yes. But again, we all have our own viewpoints. That's why fan fiction is out there. And you're going to keep to the story, but you're going to write it on your own twist. And that makes inconsistencies when you are looking at a show that is this long, because you can't say that Andrew Dobbs' writing is the same as Eric Kripke's writing. They're very different people, very different ideas, and that's part of what's happened.
Well, you nailed it. You nailed it. That's everything that I feel and everything that makes me so sad. Because, like, if you think of like the evolution of Corinne, okay, so season 1 through 5, I was literally obsessed with Supernatural, like obsessed. And so that tells you a lot about Eric Kripke, which is really funny because I found out that Eric Kripke literally, he had an idea for the show and they didn't like it. And it wasn't even anything like the two brothers.
Yeah, I know. And then he twisted. Yeah.
Maybe you sent it to me. Someone did, and I was like, "Whoa, this is amazing." Or maybe I was studying up on it. But then on a whim, he came up with this Sam and Dean and everything, and then they ended up falling in love with it, and so he went with it on a whim. And
Yeah.
I mean, what he did in season 1 through 5, and I agree with you how even season 1 through 5 evolved, because especially when they brought in Castiel, I was just like, this is amazing. But they had me so hooked and so in love with these characters that I didn't want to let go, and so many other people didn't want to let go. And even people who love Supernatural always and forever, like myself, we all can sit and say, I really didn't like, it all fell apart at season 7, or it all fell apart at season 12, and they were never able to pick back up again. Yet we never stopped watching it. We never let go because of the love we had for those characters so much, which then to tie into what you said about Jared and Jensen, and maybe you were indicating that, they're just actors, but like towards the end there, I feel like they should have had a little bit of a choice into what kind of happens to their character, especially Jensen.
I agree. I know they had that when Jensen came out with that statement, and I don't have the quote in front of me. He had said something about how it was the first, I think he said it was like one of the first times they had actually ever been in the writer's room, which is incredible. Because you would think, right, who knows Dean better than Jensen, and who knows Sam better than Jared? And it's amazing to me that they didn't, because it's always seemed like such a happy family. It's amazing to me that they didn't use them more. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because one of the reasons where Mark Shepard, who plays Crowley, when he left the show, he didn't like leave badly, but he left kind of with bad feelings because he did not like what they did to his character. He felt that they had made Crowley a joke, and it's not where he saw that character should have been as the actor. So I think on the writer's point of views and the later showrunners, they probably did not utilize the actor's thoughts enough. So Jensen talked about how they went in there and it's the first time they were there, and they were given okay, here's how it ends. And he's like, and it was, here it is.
Yeah.
And yes, I would think they would have said, hey, this is what we think. What do you guys think? Does this fit your vision? I think this.
Right, because obviously Jared and Jensen, those characters have not wavered. Jared, like Sam and Dean, have not wavered. Period. Those two characters have been consistent across the board, and obviously they're the main characters. This show's been around for 15 years. I personally am offended. I've invested 15 years of my whole life. I started watching it on the pilot. The very day they came onto the scene saying, saving people, hunting things, I was like, you have me. Okay, I'm in. What? Let's go. 15 years, you're not going to give Jensen a chance to say, look, dude, like, I just don't see that happening to Dean.
Yeah. Listen, I don't think it's a horrible ending, but I think the fact that he then had to be convinced that it was the way to end it says something to them, that maybe they should have said, hey, maybe we should tweak this or we should tweak that. I do think, and I'm going to say, I know there were some people in the show, they're like, oh, it's as bad as Game of Thrones, it's as bad as the end of Dexter. I don't think it was a bad ending. I think it was an okay ending that wasn't going to do what it needed to do for everyone. I think the actual very, very end with him, with Sam and Dean in heaven, was very nice. With baby in heaven, even though some people are sad that it wasn't cast, I appreciated Bobby being there. To
Oh,
me, Bobby has always been an extremely important character
yes.
in the show, and it really helped form who Sam and Dean were more than John actually did. You know, he was their true adopted, true father, adopted father, whatever. He had much more to do with who they were as men than the good parts of them than
Yep.
John did. I think John kind of gave him a little bit more of the bad parts, some of the good, but
Yeah.
the obsessions and that sort of thing. So I was good with that. I thought the ending with the two of them on the bridge together was very poetic. I appreciated the callbacks to the close
Yeah.
from the first season. I appreciated the callback to the first episode when Dean is dying and they reverse the words. In episode 1, Sam says to Dean, you can do it without me, and Dean says, but I don't want to, and they reverse it. I think there's a little bit of closure circle there. It's nice, and I think they could have made it into something so much more that people would have been happy with. But again, I don't think it was horrible. You look at these other shows, and I'm just gonna call out for people who watch things. One thing that I think is always interesting is, what do writers of a book or of a TV show, what do they owe the fans? Yes, the fans make it, but what do they owe them? It's their story to an extent, it's their vision, and we're along for the ride. How much do we have to give them, and when is it too much? So for me, I look at a show like How I Met Your Mother, which the way they ended that show, I will never watch the show again. Not because I didn't think that it was, I didn't think it was a good ending, but because they turned the whole show around and made me feel lied to. The show had a certain premise. The premise started at the very beginning that Robin was not the mother and Robin was not the woman for him. And in the very end, it turns out at the end, he's with Robin and the mother's dead. And so you felt like, as a fan, you're like, I just watched your show all these years and you lied to me. That to me is a bad ending. Or to give people another CW show, The100 is one of my favorite shows in the world. I love that show. I have now decided that for me, the show ends with season 5. Season 6 was so, but I can't get rid of season 7 without getting rid of season 6. So I listened as everybody online has been complaining about Supernatural has been ruined for them and all of this. The100 in the last season took a major character, Bellamy, totally changed his personality and had a pointless death that did not contribute to the storyline. And it ruined that entire season for me. It was a horrible ending. It did not make sense.
I
And
started watching that show. I quit for some reason and I can't remember, but I know who Bella is.
1 through 5 is great, but I will tell you, I mean, it's not spoilers for anybody at this point because it ended a couple months ago. But there's a character for those of you who don't watch The100, and I would recommend it if you like post-apocalyptic dramas and CW type of stuff. It is a very good show. So Bellamy has always had this relationship with Clark. In the books, they're actually a couple. In the TV show, they're never a couple. The showrunner did not like the fact that they were a couple. The actors actually ended up getting married, and the showrunner did not like the people. They did. They're married to each other, the two actors who play Clark and Bellamy. The showrunner did not like the fact that people were Bellark shippers, because he just didn't see it that way, even though it is from the books. And he didn't like it. And in the last season, he made Bellamy, who'd always been a staunch supporter with Clark, they're in the things together. He fell influence to a cult and then did something that would have endangered her daughter. And and has something that's going to threaten his daughter. Her daughter, it's a book that this evil guy would get and know that his daughter knows something. And so instead of being with Clark, Bellamy takes the book and he threatens the daughter, that he's going to turn this in, and Clark just shoots him. And then she has to jump through a portal because she's running after the evil guy, and lets the book fall there on the ground with all of the other cult people who end up getting the book anyway. So it was like a totally pointless, you want to talk about a bad death, people who are upset about Cassiel, totally pointless death. It was out of character.
Mhm.
And it did nothing for the storyline because the bad thing still happened to her daughter anyway. She shot him without preventing it. So horrible, horrible ending. So I look at Supernatural, and these are the two things I saw quite close to each other. The 100 ended like maybe a month before Supernatural, maybe 2 months, I can't remember. So you look at that where they've really destroyed a character, like totally destroyed who he was. I don't think Supernatural destroyed any of the characters. Maybe they didn't let them keep the growth they had accumulated, but
Right.
it's not like it was a storyline ending that you can't look at the storyline and say, well, it doesn't make sense. It might not make us happy, but you can see where you got there. It might have been able to be done better,
Exactly.
but you can see where they got there.
Yeah. And I have to say, that's so funny because, you know, you get involved in TV shows and then sometimes the TV show might fall off your radar for a little while because you're so invested in another show.
Yeah.
100, don't feel bad though, because I must have sensed something about 100. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let it fall off to the wayside like I did. But I know who Bellamy is. And obviously, Bellamy is a huge character, a huge hero, I feel like. So that's disgusting.
And very similar, I will say, to the Cat's character. He died like 2 episodes before the end. And in their storyline in the end, there is kind of like this, not a god, but a higher being that everybody evolves to. And Clark and her all close friends choose. Well, Clark isn't allowed to evolve because, you know, she's evil because she's killed people. But her friends are allowed to evolve, but they choose instead to stay with her, and they have their own little band of family. And everybody is good, but Bellamy, who is the one who believed in this higher power from the cult, dies 2 episodes before him because he's already dead. He can't come back and be with them, and it's like, ah.
Is this a
So
thing? Is this a CW thing, or are these just horrible?
I don't know.
Seriously, what the hell?
Just the shows we watch, because here's the deal, right? With Supernatural, like you said, people die and they come back all the time. On the 100, people die all the time. They don't come back on the 100. Different type of show, and then I've been streaming Arrow for a little bit. It does seem to be like a CW theme that people die a lot in their shows. Vampire Diaries,
Yeah,
the originals. I did a COVID, Netflix binge of both of those this summer. What's the alien one? I'm blanking out on the name of it all of a sudden. New Mexico, it's the name of the city. There's aliens where people say about aliens. I'm blanking out. Somebody will tell. Huh?
I'm stuck in my own genre. Like literally, I only watch Supernatural, Dexter, Grey's Anatomy right now, which is totally off the wall. Crap.
I do watch a lot of things, but I have a strange apparent obsession with CW shows.
A lot of people do. And that's the thing. Like you can't help but love their characters, but then they let their writers just, I don't know. Like I did hear like with Supernatural, keep thinking about what that show is that you're wanting to talk about. But I do feel like they I heard, I don't know if it was from season 10 on, but they've always been afraid that the show wasn't ever going to be asked back again. And so I don't know if that contributed. I mean, how could it not have contributed
Maybe.
to all the bad writing, you know?
Yeah.
And then toying with the fans and not knowing. But there's no excuse, in my opinion, for character integrity.
Yeah.
And not taking the roots and making the roots a priority, especially in the very last season. And so they've brought people, they've killed people, they brought them back, they've killed people, they brought them back, like Mary and even John. I would have preferred to just wait on that cute little nugget and bring them back at the very end. But then you have the whole COVID situation too.
Yeah.
You know, because I would have loved to have just not even seen Mary or John until the very, very end. That usually when shows end like this, you see so many cameos, and COVID ruined that experience. So then
it did.
Could you have possibly just waited? Like, I would have been happy not even seeing Supernatural. I mean, I'd already waited like what, 6 months already? Just give me a whole year and give me a real good ending, as opposed to throwing something together and breaking my whole entire soul into a million.
I know. I think the problem was with anything is that people were already signed on. You know, it was supposed to be over. People were already signed on to new projects. Like due to COVID and due to Supernatural going over, Jared didn't start filming Walker until just recently, which Walker comes on in January. And I'm just going to go off on a tangent here. I do not like Jared with short hair, but I'm sure I'll get used to it eventually. But
I have to see it. I've had
they totally cut his hair because, you know, he's a Texas Ranger. But I think that was the thing, because I'm with you. You'd like to say, okay, can we just stop it here and everybody get together like in a year and film it? And probably in reality, that's not feasible. They had to break down sets. They had to finish things. But yeah.
How selfish of me. Come on, you guys. As if you have other projects to do.
So, I mean, we can just keep hoping for me, you know, 5 years, maybe a little reboot. If Jensen could do that for us, that would be lovely.
Wait,
it just disappeared.
How do you do this? It doesn't work.
I can see like the it's weird when you hold it that way. I bet it's because it's a screen, because I can see the back of your phone when you hold it that way, but when you turn the screen, it just goes into the picture.
This is such a mess. Wow. Hello, Jared Padalecki. I love it. I love the short hair. I love it.
I gotta get used to it, but I'll be watching. You know, it's a CW show and it's Jared. I'll be there.
Me too. Are you gonna watch The Boys?
I have actually already watched the first 2 seasons of The Boys. It was an Amazon Prime binge. For those of you who don't know, The Boys is on Amazon Prime, and Eric Kripke is the showrunner for that. Super different from Supernatural, but with some cool callbacks, like Jim, who plays Bobby on Supernatural, is in The Boys as a small side character from time to time, which was, when I saw him, I was like, Bobby!
Me too.
But, really, for those of you, if you love Supernatural and you love Eric Kripke, I would watch The Boys, understanding it is a really different show. Some of you may have thought Supernatural was violent. Just remember, Supernatural is a network show. The Boys is an Amazon Prime show. Super bloody, many scenes with very gratuitous, gross, bloody scenes. But it is a really intriguing show, and I'm very interested to see what Jensen will do on that, because it's going to be such a different character for him. I think that's the thing for all of the cast. Well, for Jared and Jensen with the whole 15 years, for those of us who grew up with them when it's been 15 years of your life, we don't know them as anything else. Well, for me with Jensen especially, because I know he was on a soap opera, but I didn't see him on the soap opera. Jared, I know from Gilmore Girls. I watched him on that. But they are Sam and Dean, you know, that's like who they are to you, and it's gonna be really interesting to see Jensen in a different role.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree with you more. Number one, I love Bobby Singer. And I love Jim Beaver as Bobby Singer. Now my dogs are starting to get excited. Like, they're starting to act crazy. But I love him, and I'm excited to hear that. All the shows that I like watching, I'll see him come in, like Breaking Bad. He was on that for a little bit, just like a hot little moment. Dexter. He was on that for a hot minute.
Yeah.
So whenever I see him pop up on these shows that I like, I always get really excited because I do love him so much as a character. And
I do.
agree with you more. Having Bobby at the end was a beautiful gift. If we weren't able to have Castiel, which I don't understand why.
I don't understand why they couldn't either. If, you know, I don't know what their constraints were. I think obviously the original vision was probably something where, you know, they go in and everybody is in the bar, though the woman who plays Ellen says she hadn't been asked back, which seems really weird to me since it was her Roadhouse. But I don't know what would have happened, but I do feel like we missed that. And for me, yes, at least Bobby being there to be the one. And again, I understand those of you who wanted to see Cass there. I do, and I would have liked him to be there too. But I think it's two things. It made sense for it to be Bobby, because remember, Bobby has been in heaven all this time. Bobby's been dead for a while. Even though Cass was an angel up in heaven, he didn't really live in heaven like Bobby did. And it was very important to them, and they said it multiple times leading up to it, that the last show was bringing it back to the brothers. It started with the brothers, it was ending with the brothers. And I think they probably thought if Cass was there, it would be a distraction from that. It did not bring them that circle where in the beginning it was 2 and in the end it was 2. And that was really what they were going for.
Oh yeah. That is definitely what they were going for, because even though, and I'm going to bring Jack into this too, I feel Jack and Cass had their place, like a big place with the brothers and being family. They played their homage to it when they were carving their names, into the table in the bunker. Of course, I would have liked more because I really feel like they were like family. But then when
Yeah.
you say it that way, because they even had their same outfits on and everything, and they were doing a lot of Easter eggs. Like, I'm sure you noticed these things, but one of our favorite things, I feel like, as a fan, is when they always had the funny aliases when they were the FBI agents. And this time they were Kripke, right? And Singer.
Kripke and Singer, yeah. And then they put the original plate back on Baby, the Kansas plate.
Yes. So, those were little gifts for us. So I don't want to deny those.
They were, and I felt bad for the cast and even the writers afterwards that there was so much outcry, because honestly, so I cried to the episode, and then I cried when the cast and crew came out, where Jared and Jensen came out and they thanked us as fans. I can't remember, and again, somebody else maybe will come along in your comments and tell me that somebody else has done it, but I do not remember any other show that I watched where they actually filmed a thank you to the fans and put it in the last episode. It really shows that they may have not always done what we wanted, and they may not have been perfect as writers and as actors, but they really did care, and they did what they thought they could do to the best.
And that's another thing. I think this is a good place for us to sort of wrap a little bit, is that's one of the other things that the fans are so invested in Supernatural for, is simply because of those characters, those actors, and how they're all truly the Supernatural family. Like, they really, truly are. And that's beautiful. Just like you said, do you see that with the 100 or shows like Dexter? Which I love Dexter, so that's why I say.
Yeah, they're just been an incredible cast and crew. And I actually have something that we'll see if I'm going to try to turn it up loud enough and see if it'll play, that we can hear it. I can try to hold it up. So after this episode, the end, I did go back and watch scene 1 to kind of look at those symmetries. And then I watched the end of season 5, which was Kripke's ending. And I pulled up the video again today because I wanted to talk about how we talked about how endings are hard, and that, lots of time endings don't work. And so this is, Kripke wrote this, and I think these words, and this is going to be Chuck talking, works for this episode too. In a way, it's kind of amazing, other than there's going to be a little spot in the middle about Dean being alive, because remember, all of you, season 5, Sam dies, Dean lives and goes off to lead a regular life. It's amazing how this really works as a final statement for season 5 too. So let's see if we can hear it.
Hopeless.
Okay, just now. Let me see if I can hold it up.
Endings are hard. Any chapped-ass monkey with a keyboard can poop out a beginning, but endings are impossible. You try to tie up every loose end, but you never can. The fans are always going to bitch. There's always going to be holes. And since it's the ending, it's all supposed to add up to something. I'm telling you, they're a raging pain in the ass. This is the last Dean and Bobby will see of each other for a very long time.
I'm gonna cry.
And for the record, at this point next week, Bobby will be hunting a Rougarou outside of Dayton. But not Dean. Dean didn't want Cass to save him. Every part of him, every fiber he's got, wants to die or find a way to bring Sam back. But he isn't going to do either. Because he made a promise. So what's it all add up to? It's hard to say. But me, I'd say this was a test. For Sam and Dean. And I think they did all right. Up against good, evil, angels, devils, destiny, and God himself. They made their own choice. They chose family. And, well, isn't that kind of the whole point? No doubt, endings are hard. But then again, nothing ever really ends.
That's the smartest thing Chuck ever said.
It is. And just, I was watching it and I was like, how funny that even back then Eric Kripke has in there, and even God himself, not knowing what it was going to be 10 years after that. And it just really, to me, really, you could have played those same words at the end of season 15, and it would have still fit. So I think even though it wasn't a perfect ending, it was an ending that you can say makes sense. But then again, for all of you watching, I'm still ending at season 19. They rode off into the sunset, and that's what my brain is going to say forever. And
I like that. I can only wish that they would have, if they wanted it to end the way that it did with Dean, then they would have taken out some of the crazy goofball episodes that they wasted my time with through season 15.
yeah,
I wish they would have taken them out. But maybe Jensen will get to have his last word after all. And who knows? One can always hope that maybe he'll pull something together, you know, with his connections that he has right now with the WB. And I mean, listen, I'm a Dexter fan. I cover Rewind of Supernatural on Twitch every Monday at 10 a.m. And I do a Rewind of Dexter every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on Twitch. And I was doing this before I knew that they were going to do a Dexter revival. So that was a huge treat for me. Something I never thought would ever have happened. You've never watched Dexter?
I have not. My husband has watched it. I never have, but I have heard of that too. So I guess we can keep our fingers crossed. You know, Jensen said maybe 5 years. Maybe 5 years we'll get something that will make us all a little bit happier.
We'll put that in the universe.
Meanwhile, you know, I've got Netflix there, and I can live with the boys whenever I want to and relive my favorites. And I think that's the important thing for all of us. It's a show that meant a lot to a lot of people for many different reasons. And that doesn't go away just because it's over.
Exactly. We can go rewind anytime we want. Yeah. And I do have so much fun going back and watching. Literally, we're on season 4 right now. Season 1 through 5 is absolutely my favorite. No diggity doubt. And so I got to see Castiel coming back again, and I just love it. The last thing I wanted to say is, you know, that I didn't say before is, and I wanted to just ask this of you really quick, which kind of makes me go backwards a little bit instead of like putting an end on this. But yeah. I feel like another thing that they left out for us, and they just kind of like what they tended to do this entire season, is come up with a really cool idea and then just drop it. For example, when all of the people that they have killed came out of hell, you know, that's how it started. Season 15 started all these.
Right, that's true.
And then they dropped it like within like what, 4 episodes. So I can see where Mark Shepard was like, I quit. I'm done. This is crazy.
But if you think about it, they've done that before. The scene where Mark of Cain, you have the Mark of Cain season, and then the second season when the season after that, when Dean still has it and Dean becomes a demon. Yes, they carry on the theme of he has it and how are we going to get it off and that whole thing. But the part where he is a demon is like so short. It's like 1 episode. It's like, here he is, he's gone away, okay, he's a demon, now we've caught him and we've made him back human, and now we just have to make sure he doesn't become a demon again. It was so sometimes it's like, you're right, they came up with a great idea, and I think they did not know how to carry the storyline forward, which, you know what, I can get that. Is, you know, that I write stories sometimes, and I've been struggling with something myself where I come up with, I'm like, oh, this is such a great idea, I'm going to write about this, and then I'm like, well, wait, what happens next? And I think that's the problem sometimes with these supernatural episodes, is that they get to that, I've got a great idea and I wrote an episode, and then they're like, oh, I don't know where I'm going. All right, it's over.
Yeah, it fizzles. Because if you remember, if I can remember back, okay, on season 19, it was Sam, Dean, Castiel, and maybe
Rowena was still alive then too, and
yeah. All of the bad people were like coming at them, and they were like closing in on them. It really felt like The Walking Dead. And I was like, whoa, how are they going to do this? This is exciting. And boom. And then the Empty comes along. And I really thought that Billy and the Empty, like something really intense was going to happen with that. And maybe I felt like the empty would like defeat God a little bit, maybe along with Jack. I'm not really sure. I haven't thought that through, but I just really, what was the point of the empty really? You know?
Yeah.
You know? So let's again, I'll go back to saying I really hope Jensen comes up with something. If not, I mean, I'll come to terms with it because only one reason. I don't have any other choice.
That is true, and I'm going to be turning into both of them on their new shows. You know, I'm going to check out Walker. I'm not usually a big crime show person, but I'm going to check it out. And as I said, I've already watched the first 2 seasons of The Boys, and it's just such an intriguing, bizarre show that I can't wait to see what he does on that show.
Me too. Well, Cindy, you know, I've missed you. This was a great excuse for
It
me to
was.
spend time with you and talk to you. We've never talked
for
about
inviting me.
Yeah, of course. I adore you so much. I miss you so much. And I was like, wait, she knows so much about Supernatural. Like, why have we not talked about this before? Because we've had so much
Oh,
to talk
I
about.
don't know.
Well, I hope that we'll have more. Like maybe we could talk about Walker. You know, maybe you can hop on
Yeah,
and talk about worldly events or something. But I'd love to have you again if you're up for it.
of course, anytime.
Okay, well, stay here. I'm just going to sign off with everyone. You guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you'll leave comments down below. Of course, be kind. We all have our own opinions and we all have a right to it. And I totally respect if you disagree with me, you agree with Cindy, or you disagree with Cindy and you agree with me. Either way, you have a right to your supernatural opinion. And we appreciate you just being here. And you guys, if you want to rewind with Supernatural with me on Monday mornings on Twitch, Life After Neverland, 10 a.m. It's kind of a weird time to watch blood and gore, but hey, that's when we do it. So join me there. And in the meantime, everyone, God bless. And thanks for watching. Mwah!